Southeast Asia CFOs face a 2026 transformation test as 82% prioritize growth while AI, automation, and trusted data reshape finance. To give us more context, we have Nikhil Parambath of Blackline and Anson Mack of Deloitte. Welcome, Nikhil and Anson. So just to start, what's driving the gap between digital ambition and execution in finance now?
We have helped a lot of companies performing their transformations, helping to plan ahead and transform their finance function. And as part of it, what we come across is that majority of the gap comes from the fact that they have experienced difficulties when it comes to like what we call random and sporadic investment improvement, meaning that they improve here and there, but they don't really have a cohesive plan on how to actually make the transformation stick and actually scale out. So from that perspective, the best way from our is to actually set up a clear vision first, what they want to transform the finance and what goal they want to achieve, and then establish a clear roadmap on how to do so. And only by doing that, they can reach the ambitions and what the reality is.
Thank you for having us, Sis. If I were to take a slightly more different view on this, it is one word, it's data. What we typically see is that large enterprises especially, but most organizations typically have data in multiple silos because you have different systems. And typically in each of these silos, you might actually have fairly old historical data as well, data that is not necessarily clean. So you start with the problem of siloed data which are not integrated. On top of it, you got within those silos, you might have data that is not clean, all of which eventually results in the fact that you do not trust the output of what's coming, right? So there's a lack of trust. So that fundamentally, if you were to look at it, is what would drive a lot of this gap when it comes to the digital side of things, right? The second element was about change management. Now, you can't go about embarking on something without actually undoing the underlying change management when it comes with respect to processes or people along the journey. So those would be the two key areas that I would say is what's driving the gap, in addition to the perspective that Anson provided earlier.
But in order to address this early on, what early signs should we watch out for, specifically those that show that a digital finance strategy is failing?
Go back to actually what Nikhil had said. Majority of the time when we see a lot of the transformation strategies not is failing, it's because they don't really have the right data, a clean, good set of data to actually enable the transformation. Because nowadays, when we talk about transformation, we're not just talking about simple process engineering. We're talking about adopting digital solutions, automations, and AI. And unfortunately, AI and any digital automations, to be honest, cannot be executed well unless they have good quality data. Garbage in, garbage out after all. The other part is also coming back to is the process. Because why many companies fail to automate is because they adopt what we call a lift and shift approach, meaning that they take a really fragmented, really bad, inconsistent process that they have today and try to simply just ask the AI or the robotics to just replicate it. But the problem is when we do replication, the key issue really is that if your process is bad, AI will just make it worse. Because AI do it faster than human.
Thanks, Anson. I think you framed that very well in terms of the high level, if I may call it the macro factors there. From an operational standpoint, if you look at some of the warning signs, a very easy one to look at is, when you embarked on this transformation, you obviously wanted to automate. And if you're still doing anything manually, that is a warning sign because something is not working, right? So that's a very clear warning sign that you got to look out for. The second one would be about, do you get real-time visibility? Because again, when you embark on initiatives like this, you are trying to make sure that you are bringing all your data together, bringing your processes and automating them, and you're trying to get to real-time visibility. If you're not getting that, then again, something is broken. So you got to kind of start fixing that as well, right? And the third one, I would say, especially in the context of finance and accounting teams, would be about, are you now able to do proactive risk management versus reactive risk management? If you're not getting to that proactive element, which means that you might have actually automated everything, but you're not leveraging insights of that transformation, then again, that's a warning sign.
On that note, can you also give some recommendations? What practical steps can organizations take to build a resilient AI-enabled finance function?
When it comes to rebuilding an AI resilience finance function, I think the first part is we need to have a very clear strategy and vision what we want to achieve with it. And then from there, what is important is to actually put in a proper governance and control framework to drive to govern the AI, because similar to what I previously mentioned, right? Because a lot of the issue is because we don't have proper processing control, we don't have good quality data, and then AI will just make it worse. So it's actually one of the key important parts is that when you actually thinking about how AI works, we need to put in the proper guardrails to make sure that AI actually work according to our what we want the policy and procedure to be.
Absolutely, Anson. From a technology or system perspective, I will go back to my first response and Anson's second one as well, and that's all about data again. You need to start with actually having foundational clean data. So what we would call as AI ready data, that is non-negotiable data as a practical step before we move forward. The second part then is to look at what I would call as purpose-built AI solutions. See, we all live in this era where everybody's exposed to some kind of an AI solution or the other. And I think most of us are exposed more towards Gen AI-based large language models. Right? The reality is these models are trained on fairly large amount of generic data. That works in the context when you and I are looking to get answers to certain things. But when you're looking at an enterprise and especially when it comes to finance data, you cannot have general stuff. You need to have data in a solution that is actually trained on the context of that business, right? When I'm doing reconciliations, what does a reconciliation actually mean? What does a good reconciliation look like? What do bad reconciliations look like? How are exceptions managed? Those are specific elements within the context of that particular business application.
These are all very helpful points. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, Nikhil and Anson.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Once again, those were Nikhil Parambat, Enterprise Application Sales Leader and Regional Vice President for Asia at Blackline, and Anson Mack, Associate Director for Accounting Operations Assurance at Deloitte. For more news, visit asianbankingandfinance.net.